Perhaps second only to the eye, the mouth is the most complex part of the head. In fact, a lot of artists have more trouble with the mouth than they do with the eye. That's because a lot of people kind of categorically mistake the mouth for simply being the upper lip and the lower lip. Of course, those are there, but the mouth sits on this entire maxilla area, this entire muzzle. Think of like a dog or cat, like they have that long muzzle. We have a muzzle too. It's just a lot shorter. It doesn't stick out as far. But we can see if I tilt the head here, there are these planes that take us up, in front, to the side. It's box-like, right? But of course, it's not so box-like that it points to the side like the jaw does. These planes largely still point forward to the front, but there is some subtle articulation here of 3 different planes we need to look at. Then the lip kind of like juts in here. And another plane that's very important is the one that happens underneath the lower lip and the one that kind of links up with the chin. Remember in the chin, we talked about the upper plane, the top plane of the chin? Well, that top plane of the chin links with the underplane of the mouth. And there's this beautiful little stair-steppy rhythm. Look at the shadow that my brush is casting here. See, it's like a little stair-step rhythm. We're gonna look at that. That is very important when it comes to understanding the mouth. In fact, let me just show you with a quick experiment. Let me put my brush right here and tilt the head. Look at how much room is on the side here. The mouth wraps around is what I'm saying. And we're gonna really gain a respect for that. A lot of people will flatten out the mouth too much and not respect the fact that the mouth turns around the muzzle. So, much like the eye, there's a lot to get to here. Thankfully though, a lot of this connects rhythmically. For instance, we'll look at a rhythm as the laugh line of the nose comes down, which we introduced a while ago. The laugh line comes down, it's gonna link right up with the underplane of the mouth here, and that'll help us draw the mouth correctly as well. So let's get right into it and start breaking this stuff down. All right, so the mouth is not just the lips, it's an entire region, and it kind of has an overall circular rhythm to it. That circular rhythm is defined on the top side by the nasolabial furrow coming down from the nose, which we looked at in the nose chapter, and it changes direction right here, just to the outside of the corner of the mouth. So it comes down, changes direction, and sort of hooks up with remember the sad face rhythm of the chin? Remember that? It hooks up right there. And of course, the same on the other side, coming around the mouth, separating a little bit from the corner of the mouth, coming down, hooking up with the sad face rhythm of the upper plane of the chin. This is why I put the mouth at this part of the class after the nose and chin, because the mouth is the mechanism that connects the two of them rhythmically. Not to mention the fact that it has its own series of interesting planes. But the planes of the mouth are not that complex. They kind of come in 3s, and I have another diagram here. Once again, it's linked with the nose. We remember how the nose had sort of 3 planes, 2 sides and a front, 1, 2, 3. Well, the muzzle, which is this area of the mouth, the muzzle, also has 1, 2, 3, and I can continue this down to the lip. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The trilogy of planes kind of hook up from the nose all the way down to the chin. Now, there are some of these outside areas that are external from that, which we'll also talk about, but this 1, 2, 3 action is very handy to remember. These planes are incredibly important because they articulate the roundness of the mouth. The mouth is not flat. It almost looks like it appears maybe a little flat from the front view because we're looking at it straight on. Like if you look at the Asaro head, you can almost mistake the mouth for being flat, and a lot of artists fall prey to this. The mouth is not flat. The mouth wraps around what's called the tooth cylinder. And let's just take a moment here to appreciate how not flat or how round this is. Our teeth are they're half cylinders. That's why this area is called the tooth cylinder. There's nothing flat about this. And you can kind of see you'd have a plane here, and a plane here. Now, also, don't confuse this. The mouth does not wrap this dramatically. It doesn't follow, the mouth does not follow the teeth like they're subcutaneous. It's more like this. The mouth is kind of like that, straight here, and then like this. So it doesn't hug the teeth directly. The front teeth more or less kind of touch the front of your lip, but these back teeth recess further back from the skin. In this area, there's a lot of muscle that pushes the mouth outwards. And here's a quick look at it. I'm talking about this circular muscle called the orbicularis oris. Again, the name is not so much as important as you know that it exists. And this muscle, you can imagine, is incredibly developed. We can move our mouths in a wide range of gestures. And so these muscle fibers are pretty thick, and they push the mouth out at the corners. And again, that muscle is all in here, and it pushes the lips a little out from the back teeth. Also, a handy little piece of anatomy to know, this part of the skull here is called the maxilla. So we've got the maxilla working in tandem with the orbicularis oris muscle, which all work together to create the muzzle. The word muzzle often reminds me of animals. Dogs and cats and other animals have very long muzzles. It really sticks out of the face like this, right? Well, we have muzzles too. It's just ours are compressed more. It only comes out, it comes out a fraction of the way, but it does protrude outward. On this photograph of me, if you'll excuse the extremely unflattering angle, you can really see the protrusion of the muzzle. And it works in those 3 planes, right? 1, 2, 3. Let's map it from the nose. First of all, let's get that outer rhythm coming down from the laugh lines, changing direction just outside the corner of the mouth, coming down, hooking up with the sad face rhythm of the chin, and the same on the other side. It's a bit foreshortened here, so you got to be careful with that. Don't push it out too far. We know we have the septum planes here. Now they don't just come down straight, they widen out a little bit with that Cupid's bow that we have, and there are some there's a little minor plane change there, but for now let's just keep it flat. Meets the upper lip here, then it comes back in like this, then it comes back out on the lower lip. Let me just lower this line here. Back out on the lower lip, and it does not come back in like that, it actually continues out a little wider. And then from the tips of the wings of the nose, we go down to form the side planes, and then down like this. So it's that 1, 2, 3 arrangement. 1, 2, 3. And this outside part is not part of the 1, 2, 3. It's separate. It's more of a rhythmical element that connects everything. The muzzle itself is confined to this 1, 2, 3 area. Let's go back to our swimming friend here and do the same analysis, but from a front view. Again, notice how much flatter the mouth looks from the front, but we should know now not to be fooled. We can go down from the nose and get the Cupid's bow plane. This is a narrow sort of middle plane. Let's get the side planes that go from the wing of the nose down to the corner of the mouth. Let's just remind ourselves of the sad face rhythm of the chin here. Let's also just ballpark just outside the corner of the mouth where that circular rhythm is going to change. Now let's go ahead and get that circular rhythm coming down from the nasolabial furrow here, the laugh line, changing direction here, meeting up with the sad face rhythm of the top plane of the chin. And again on the other side. All right, let's go back to our 1, 2, 3 rhythm here, which narrow out for the upper lip, widen back out for the lower lip, and then continue widening underneath the lower lip. Then our 2 side planes kind of meet somewhere down here. In fact, I'm a little bit off on my circular rhythm. The sad face rhythm of the chin goes a little bit further into its side planes, and this links up. It's got a little bit of a flatness here before it turns up. It's like that. And then let me just fix this line. Fixing is good. It means we're thinking. And then we come down and we meet the rhythm like that. And the last thing we'll do is just separate the upper lip from the lower lip. We can also separate the lower lip here like this and complete our 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then remember, this outside is separate, but kind of binding them all together. All right, let's actually draw this so we can make sense of it a little more. Now let's simplify this. I'm not going to try and copy every little undulation of the guy's lip, but let's just simplify this. This is the upper lip I'm drawing right now. 1, 2, 3. Let's ballpark where the bottom of the septum is, which would be up here. We know that septum comes down for the Cupid's bow area. The upper lip, which we'll talk about in more depth in a moment. For now, I'm just going to block it in like a simple plane like this. I'll block in the bottom of the lower lip here. 1, 2, 3. Let's get these planes in as we go. In for the upper lip, out for the lower lip. We know it's going to go out even further for the underplane of the lower lip. We know it's going to meet up with the sad face rhythm of the chin. Also, let's ballpark this point just outside the corner of the mouth. Let's ballpark where the corner of the wings of the nose would be, which I didn't draw. They'd be, right here. Let's go ahead and connect this rhythm like this. Connect this rhythm like that. I have a little too much room here on the maxilla. Let's bring that nose down a little bit, more like that. Could have just cut this out of the video, but I want you guys to know that I'm always, making mistakes and revising. Got to double check ourselves. Even professionals will make mistakes. Of course, they're not mistakes as long as you are guided by them. They will lead you to a more accurate final. And of course, exact proportions will change here from person to person. You know, this whole area is considered the upper lip area, like the maxilla area. Some people will have larger ones, like take a look at someone like Stephen King. He has a very large muzzle maxilla area from the nose. There's a lot of distance there, versus our swimming friend up here who has a very short one. Let's just now connect the wings of the nose with the outer planes of the lips, the outer sides of the lips, to complete our 1, 2, 3 action here. We'll get just a little bit more space in here, which will allow us to complete that 1, 2, 3 rhythm like this. In fact, if you look at this guy, you can see the sad face rhythm here, and then it has a large bit of straight to it before going up. This is also something that can change from person to person. Now, just to throw some values down here, let's just get the underplanes in shadow. The upper lip points downward. So when the light's coming from above, the upper lip will be in shadow. So this is a handy little thing to know. We can usually ballpark the upper lip in tone. The lower lip faces up. So if anything, you might want to get a light value and put it here just to show that facing up. And this middle plane underneath the lower lip faces down pretty dramatically. So let's get that in shadow. Can you see it on him, this plane that's in shadow underneath the lower lip? This is an incredibly important plane. It sets off the mouth. It allows the lips to protrude out properly. However, these planes come out more. These planes are not so much in shadow. The recess is not the same. Perhaps we can put these in a little bit of a like half shadow to show that they are coming out again. Same with the outer planes here on the maxilla. We can put these in like partial shadow, let's say, just to show that they are turning slightly. It's not such an abrupt plane change, but it is a plane change. Let's just quickly address the shape of the lips. I was using a very simple shape here, which is fine to start with. And in fact, I can start with that here, the kind of 1, 2, 3 thing. But the upper lip is very well known for having a little dip right in the middle. This little graceful bowing action. And then right at the end, it kind of flattens out again like this to meet the corner of the mouth. In fact, on the model above, it even kind of tilts upward just a little bit. It's a very subtle, sensitive area, and people will have different rhythms there. Now let's work these planes to understand how to connect these areas. It's kind of like this, and coming out from kind of behind that, the lip wraps around to the corner. Out from behind, wrapping around to the corner. The lower lip, by comparison, is much more simple. It's just this kind of overall U shape that traces its way back to the corners of the mouth. And it does not have this narrow little front part. Again, it widens out. We know this already. It widens out here. And like I mentioned, the upper lip overall faces down. So when you're just throwing a value on it, you can mass a dark value here to show that that lip is pointing downward. Now, if we want to break the upper lip down one step further, there is even a plane here that points down even more aggressively. So you get an even greater plane change here as the lip wraps underneath and, going towards the inside of the mouth. It's such a subtle plane, it's not even shown on the Asaro head. You can see it on her a little bit, right at the bottom, like the bottom eighth of the lip as it kind of wraps under. Similarly, the lower lip has a top and front plane. You can separate it like this. And if we wanted to show that with a value, we can just maybe throw a little lighter value on the top plane. These planes are evident when we're so close up to the mouth, but in general, what we did here is usually good, just throwing the upper lip in shadow, bottom lip in light. Oftentimes that's all the information we'll see, because usually you're not painting a portrait that's this close up. But if you ever are, this is good to know. And just to complete our diagram, we have the Cupid's bow here. Now the Cupid's bow is not just flat like we've been drawing it, it has a little dip. That's why it's called a bow. And if you want to be extremely technical, there is a little thickness to it. It's like that. We'll use the red pencil actually to draw the center line here, the cross contour. So, I'm adding complexity to our 1, 2, 3 action. I realize that. But again, you want to understand it simply first, and then you add the complexity, layer it on top. And last but not least in our diagram here, let's just continue outward for the underplane of the lower lip, following that sad face rhythm of the chin. It's very narrow on her. We'll get that in nonetheless. It faces under, it faces way under, so let's throw a value on it. Again, this plane is so important. I did not know about this plane for the longest time. I neglected it. I find this underplane of the lower lip as important as like the lip itself, because it gives the mouth like a platform to rest on. And then we know this plane traces up back here, but it's not in as deep shadow. It comes out of shadow. It still faces under a little bit, but it comes back out. Oftentimes when we go to paint the head, you'll see that this edge is very soft. It's not a hard plane change. It is a plane change, but it's a very gradual one. So it can often soften out like this. That's more of a painting thing though. We'll get into that in the next chapter. We already know the bottom of the nose will be in shadow. And not to get too far into the painting stuff, but often the nose will cast a shadow. And the only reason I'm saying that is because a cast shadow can be a great way to cross contour the form, using the shadow to go over the Cupid's bow, down into the Cupid's bow, and then out again. We'll surely examine that more in painting, but when you're blocking in values like this in these diagrams, it's something to keep in mind. And I always find it helpful just to complete these diagrams with this basic rhythm that comes down the nasolabial furrow, meeting out here, and coming down to meet the underplane of the lower lip. And of course, it goes without saying, the rest of the chin exists down here. In fact, let me remind you that this contour we've been drawing is the same contour for the top plane of the chin, right? The sad face rhythm of the chin. The underplane of the lower lip shares that contour with the chin. Let's draw some center lines over this. Remember in the intro to this chapter, I put my brush like right here and it cast that shadow stair-stepping down? Well, that's because it's following planes that are going in and out. So the maxilla plane here comes out, dipping in for the upper lip, coming back out for the lower lip, and then dipping back in for the underplane. So out, in, and then out again for the chin. Very predictable, almost monotonous rhythm there. All right, sorry for moving these diagrams all over the place. I want to talk now about something very important, the roundness of the mouth. I already introed this earlier, but let's really get a sense for how the lips wrap around the tooth cylinder. If I were to just draw a cylinder, just block one in real quick, this kind of represents the teeth, that wrap around this way. And the lips sit on top of that, respecting the curvature. Let's start with a quick center line. The center of the lips will be along this axis here. So that makes me able to draw plane number 1. Plane number 2 will wrap around the corner of the mouth, changing that little bit of direction here. And then the corresponding plane on the other side will be severely foreshortened as it wraps around that cylinder. You might see the corner of the mouth just sticking out a little bit there. And look at the difference in width. That plane is that wide. The same plane on the other side is only that wide. Unless you're looking at the lips dead on, you will have to deal with this heavy foreshortening. That's how round the mouth is. The mouth is actually one of the roundest forms on the face, perhaps second only to like how the lids wrap around the eyeball. Now from here we can get that Cupid's bow in. I always like to block it in straight first. It helps me keep perspective. Then we can get the Cupid's bow. In fact, we can find the rest of the Cupid's bow, which also has a bit of depth to it, kind of like this. Now the upper lip has this plane here that juts out a little bit. Plane number 2 comes out from behind it, wrapping around. And from this angle, you can get a bit of articulation here as it meets the corner of the mouth. This little change here, it can become evident from the side, or when you're looking at it 3/4. On the other side, it'll come out, wrapping heavily around that cylinder and meeting the corner of the mouth like that. The lower lip, remember, had this plane that's coming out? It's another shelf-like action. I'm fond of the shelf analogy, as you can tell. So many things in the head kind of jut out like a little shelf, and the lower lip does that. Juts out, comes down, the U shape here, and it just meets basically the corner of the mouth somewhere. It meets somewhere in this rhythm here. Usually falls just shy of the corner, like it'll be pushed in this way. The corner of the mouth is like this little balling, like dimpling action here. So to block in these planes, we know they widen out for the lower lip. Now underneath the lower lip, we know that plane comes out, but down, meeting the sad face rhythm of the chin. It's a good time at this point to block in some values. Let's start with this underplane. The entire upper lip points downward, I should say. Therefore, we can mass it in with this value. This technique is called massing, by the way. Not sure why it's called that, but it's an age-old sort of charcoal terminology, massing. Perhaps because you're just blocking this in as if it were one big mass. If we wanted to get that front plane of the lower lip in a bit of a half value, we can do that. It's not turning quite as aggressively under, it's pointing to the front, but it does turn a little bit. All right, now let's continue on with our rhythm here. We know that we're going to trace this guy up here to meet somewhere outside the corner of the mouth, which then traces up the nasolabial furrow up to the nose. And on this side of the cylinder, it's very foreshortened. Be very careful here. The distance between the corner of the mouth and this rhythm will be very much more narrow than it is here. And it'll come down and meet that. Yeah, and then we know the chin will come out here, come down, turn around, extend its way out to the jaw, and before long we're connecting these pieces together. Anyway, don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's just put a little value into this plane just to show that it's also under, it's turning under the lower lip, but not as much as that first plane there. On this side, it's very foreshortened. We're just barely going to see that plane, but it is there. On this side, we can really see it. On this side, we can barely see it. Okay, one more little piece of complexity on the lips, and let me just swap that diagram out for a profile view. In profile, you can clearly see that the Cupid's bow goes in this way and then out that way before then ducking back down for the upper lip. We've got that same rhythm in perspective here. I just want to point that out because I don't think I have yet. But this is important because there is a very narrow little plane change that kind of runs across the entire upper lip, sort of terminating there. It's actually quite similar to the brow. If we look at the Isaro head, the brow came down and then jutted out in this little protrusion. That kind of that same sort of thing happens with the lips. The maxilla comes down and then there's a little piece of protrusion that comes out. It's this tiny little plane that, much like the lower planes here gave the lower lip a little platform, this plane gives the upper lip a little platform. And commonly you'll see a little bit of a lighter value happening here. I'll just block this in. There's just this subtle little plane change. You won't even find it on many diagrams of the planes of the head, but it is there. Oh, and I just want to be clear on something. This is not the contour. Like if you were drawing a portrait of a person from this angle, this would not be the contour. You would see the jaw here, and the jaw would form the contour, and this, you can throw this into tone, and that jaw would climb up like this. I just want to make that clear just in case I was misleading anyone by accident. But speaking of foreshortening, that jaw is very foreshortened, right? So we're getting that nice side plane, that diamond shape we hopefully remember. Lots of foreshortening going on with the head. Basically, no matter which angle you look at it, there's going to be foreshortening somewhere. All right, let's finish up our section on the mouth with a profile drawing. And the first thing I want to note is this overall angle that goes this way, kind of flowing diagonally. Keep in mind that the nose is the furthest out point of the head. The tip of the nose, like look at that, it really protrudes out the farthest. So from the nose to the chin is this angle. And if we were to break that angle down even further, there is this kind of stair-steppy action where we're going in, out, in, out, in, out, in. That monotonous thing that I talked about earlier. So when we draw it, let me first just ballpark in where the nose is in here. Gonna have to make this a bit smaller. Let's just make this nose a little bit more pretty for the drawing. Okay, new piece of information. The Cupid's bow is essentially halfway down the nose. If we were to just draw a little line there, it's like halfway. So this is where the Cupid's bow comes out. We know it ducks in, comes out, comes down for the upper lip. Remember that tiny little plane that ducks into the mouth? We can put that in. Then the lower lip shelves out a little bit, but not too far. It doesn't go beyond the upper lip. In fact, let's just throw a vertical measurement. That lower lip has to stay resting just behind the upper lip. So it comes out, there's a front plane there. I'm just gonna draw the contour for now. We know there's that dramatic scooping plane underneath the lower lip before jutting out to the chin. Now the chin, well, this changes from person to person, but often the chin can line up vertically with the lower lip. Some people have stronger chins than others, of course, but something along here. And then that chin dips in for the front plane, and then, circles back out for the jaw, which we'll just ballpark in here. Don't forget that underplane. We're gonna see that underplane probably. Dropping a vertical from the wing of the nose usually gives you like a halfway point from the front plane of the upper lip to the corner of the mouth. So just replicating that here, we can get the side of the Cupid's bow, which we can see from the profile, just the one side of it, and then comes down about halfway beyond here, getting that little corner of the mouth. Remember that plane is like this, and the other plane comes out from kind of behind it and wraps around, has a bit of a downward action to it before coming up to meet the corner of the mouth. Then the lower lip has that wider plane, and we can find now the contour, which falls just shy of the corner, remember that? And we already know the chin planes. Now let's grab that rhythm as it comes up, meeting the nasolabial furrow around here. The nasolabial furrow, it wraps right in with the wing of the nose, so it's following right up to where the wing of the nose is. Perhaps I'm a little narrow with it. Let's do that again. We'll go a little wider. Because we're in profile, we might see a little bit more distance there. We'll come in a little wider with it. Again, just look at the model. Everyone's going to be different here. Everyone's got the same rhythms, same planes, but when it comes to minute proportions, everyone will have differences, or else we'd all look identical. Let's just grab some underplanes here. Underplane of the nose. Let's throw in a little cast shadow just for fun. Get that Cupid's bow plane. Let's get the underplane that is the upper lip. Get this underplane of the lower lip. Get this plane in kind of that half shadow that we've been doing. And you know what, in my haste to just draw that chin, I made it too narrow. It's got more length to it. I'll talk more about proportions in the very last chapter, but essentially from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the lower lip, it's going to be equal to the chin. We can test that on this diagram. Here, it's going to be equal to the bottom of the chin. And often the number one thing that happens when you draw too fast is you'll ignore these basic truths and you'll come up with something that is just out of proportion and therefore wrong. Well, wrong when you're trying to learn what's actually there. And we'll just throw that underplane into shadow as well. And if I were to adjust one super nitpicky little thing, which now's the time to do it, this lip, remember it has that shelving action, right? Because of that, from the profile, you can actually see it wrapping around the upper lip. You can see it on him. You see the contour of the lower lip does not meet exactly, like it's not that, it's that. And the upper lip comes down. Let me just adjust this even further. So we get a sense that the lower lip is wrapping around the upper lip as the whole mouth wraps around the tooth cylinder. Another thing, sometimes you won't get this line so prominent. In fact, if you look at the model here, the line of his lips really cuts in. It's wide here at the start, but then it really starts cutting in before meeting the corner of the mouth. Again, these are all little nitpicky little things, but hey, this is the time to be nitpicky, right? And okay, so we have a cool series of drawings here. But just before we move on, there's one little thing I want to remind you of. I said it earlier, but I want to be very clear about it. If you look at the Asaro head, remember back in the jaw section, we talked about how the jaw kind of cuts into the mouth, like it sort of culminates where the corner of the mouth is. But also in a previous section, I mentioned that there can be some spacing here. There are planes that overlap that can change it. Well, that is the space caused by the orbicularis oris muscle, that mouth muscle that wraps around our mouths. That can cause a lot of spacing to happen. I'll show you a picture. Look at this guy here. This guy's jaw plane is all the way over here. Now this is very wide. Usually you won't see someone with this wide. It's almost like his mouth is smaller than the average. I'm not sure if that's actually true, but that's the appearance of it. There is a great bit of distance here. And I think a large part of that is owed to the fact that there is that circular orbicularis oris muscle that is wrapping around the mouth, causing this spacing around the outsides. It's a lot thinner on this mouth here. The jaw sort of terminates there, a lot closer to the corner of the mouth. But again, because of that orbicularis oris muscle, we do get a bit of distance between the jaw and the mouth, leaving room for our circular rhythm that I've been talking about this whole time. This can be very relevant when it comes to painting the head, because as you can see, we have a large bit of shadow here, but that little space is in light. So we have light plane, shadow plane. So just remember when you're drawing your jaw planes to not have them come up too close to the mouth, even though that's how I introed it in the jaw section. Now we should have a bit more of an appreciation for the muscle that is in here, again, wrapping around the mouth. That does cause a little bit of spacing to happen. And I'll say it again, different people, different amounts of spacing, so keep your eye out for this stuff. All right, that'll do it for the mouth. Let's move on.